those same types of people who might now say, "Oh, trans woman isn't a woman. You're a man. You're this." They were the very first people chasing me around the block, chasing me and girls like me around the block to tell me that I was a girl when I was 6, when I was 7. They'd beat you up and say you're a woman.
And now you become yourself, and now they mad.
They can't take it, darling.
Hey everybody, it's your girl Loni Love, comedian, actress, Emmy Award-winning talk show host.
And I'm Erica Montolfo, writer, showrunner, and Loni's super fun sidekick.
Yes, Erica, and thank you all for joining us for another episode. We've got a great one today. For our grown-ass topic today, we'll be talking with Peppermint about transitioning after 30. But before we dive into that, let's catch up with our girl, Erica. What's on your mind, Erica?
Well, I think you'll be happy to hear I actually went out of my house this week. And
what?
I know. I left home and I went to, hold for it, the movies, like with the real people in a movie theater, like got in my car, parked, well, valeted, you know.
Oh, of course, you valeted.
Let's not be crazy.
Park your own car. Oh, no.
Honey, have you met me? And went into a theater with a bunch of strangers with some friends of mine, and we saw this movie.
The Joker?
No, we couldn't get tickets out. Please, let's take one step at a time. I'm not going crazy. But it was this movie with Demi Moore called The Substance. Have you heard about this movie? It's Demi Moore plays kind of an aging actress, you know, kind of like herself, where she's been marginalized, and this Dennis Quaid character, who's her producer boss of this show that she's on, basically wants a younger version of her. So she gets kicked out of the show, and I don't want to do a spoiler alert, but she wants to be younger so she can prolong her career. So she gets someone slips her a message. It's like, oh, do you want to be a better, younger version of yourself? And she's like, yes, obviously, because she's, you know, motivated by youth and Hollywood and whatever.
Right.
So she follows the instructions. Okay, let's just talk about how crazy movies are. So the instructions are like, go to this alley, right? So she like goes to this ratchet alley, like in the ghetto, and then it's like knock on this door, and then like the door kind of opens up, and not even like the whole way. It's like you got to bend down to go in the door. It's like totally ratchet. You know, there could be killers there, could be rats, whatever. But she goes. She's that desperate to like hold on to her youth.
Oh.
Then she gets this thing. It's like, you know, take this whole kit, take it home, and do what it says. And she does it without even consulting a doctor. You know, like if I'm going to get Botox, I'm like, I want to know who the doctor is. You know, I'm not going to some back alley and like bowing down under the fence to get it. So she takes all this and does it, and it turns into this horrible horror movie where she takes the medicine. It's like Alice in Wonderland. She takes the substance. Her back like opens up, and like a younger version of her comes out of her back, like another person.
You know what? That's too much for me.
It's too much. It's too much. That's why I don't go to the movies. That's why I stay home.
You know, no Botox, huh? For you?
Not if I have to go to an alley to get it. I'll go to Beverly Hills to get it, but
This is a good season for the whole scary movies, so that sounds interesting. And I have some good news. I don't know, did I say this last week? Did I tell you I was nominated for Best Actress for my horror movie, Binge to Death?
No.
Yes.
Congratulations, Loni.
Yes.
Love. Woo! More awards to put behind you so you can fill up that whole area that block the plants.
Well, I'm up against some stiff competition, so we will see.
Who's the competition?
I think it's Garcelle for one of her movies. It's a limited television movie. That's what the category is, and it's called the WIN Award, the Women Image Awards. And
where can we see this movie?
The movie is playing wherever, you know, on streaming services. So I think like on Hulu or something like that. But it's Binge to Death. We'll put up a picture so you can see what it looks like. But thank you guys for that. And with that said, we got a great episode for you all today. We're going to get into all sorts of stuff. We're going to have an election update, the latest in Kamala news, the latest in Diddy news, and Sally Field had a very controversial confession, and it was very personal. And in today's grown-ass topic, we're going to be joined by our friend Peppermint as we talk about transitioning after 30. Yep. You get it all here on Grown Ass Women. Right after this break, this is Grown Ass Women Talking. Are you a grown ass woman with something to say? What are you unapologetic about? What's got you fired up?
Are you thrilled the kids are back in school? Or are you mad at your friends for asking you out after 9 p.m.? Did you get stood up on your third Tinder date this week? Whatever it is, let it all out.
Visit our website at GAWTpod.com and leave us a voice message. That's GAWTpod.com, or drop us a voice note at GAWTpod@gmail.com. We might just play your message on our next episode.
So don't hold back. This is your space to talk about it.
We're back with more GAWT. Now it's time for Grown Ass News. Each week, I'll get Erica's take on the week's entertainment news, current events, and news about grown ass women. This is a grown ass woman election update. Yeah, that's what I'm going to call it.
Yes, I love it. Love it, love it, love it.
A lot has been going on. Vice President Kamala Harris appeared on the ABC talk show, The View. She was on Howard Stern. She's been on Late Night. She's doing these whole blitz of interviews this week. And she pitched a proposal to help people raising children while also caring for aging parents, and denounced former President Donald Trump, calling some of his statements surreal and saying that he was too friendly with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. I mean, it was she's been doing all of this stuff because, people have been complaining about her not talking to media, right. But she did this strategy where she's talking to podcasts, which will hit the younger people. She also did a black male podcast with my friend Matt Barnes to hit the black man. Mm-hmm. Then she's doing the legacies. But the Howard Stern interview was really, really great. She also did 60 Minutes, which was really to me, that was a tough interview for her. Did you get to check out any of the interview?
I did. I listened to Howard today, actually, because I love Howard. I listen to him almost every day on my way to work. And I will say what I love about Kamala, because the conversation with Howard started off with him bringing up Prince, because he knew she was a Prince fan, and Howard's a Prince fan. And evidently, her and Doug are like, the first guy, soon to be first guy. He's a Prince fan too, and that kind of brought them together, because when they met, she was talking about how, I'm a rap girl, I'm a hip hop girl, but Doug likes Depeche Mode. Like he's like. He's like an 80s guy, but the thing they had in common was Prince. And so when the night Prince died, they put on Prince the whole night and just like danced and sang together. You want that in the White House, right? It's so
he wanted Prince. I mean, probably is the reason why she picked Waltz as her vice president candidate.
Wait,
because
what? What does he have to do with Prince?
Waltz?
I know,
because he's the governor of Minnesota.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. See,
I knew you had a point. You had a point.
It's like,
you're
right. So that's probably, and what's happening, what everybody's going to see right now is that everybody's doing things. Now, remember, I told you about the Univision. It was going to be a town hall.
Univision.
It got postponed. So right. I don't know where Trump is right now. His vice presidential candidate is doing rallies. Waltz is doing rallies. Waltz even said at one of the current rallies that the Electoral College needs to go. He said that abolishing the Electoral College as a means of electing American presidents is something, and to do it in the heat of a campaign, that was pretty ballsy. I think because of what's been happening through the past elections, like Hillary had won the popular vote, but the Electoral College, because the way it's set up, it went to Trump. So I think that's the reason why you're getting this pushback.
Oh, you're saying Walt said that. I thought it was
yes.
Vance. Oh, Walt.
No,
then I 100% agree. Then I agree. No, but I mean, to that point, I do believe in like one person, one vote. Yeah, I get their names confused.
What I'm saying is that it hurts the smaller states
Right.
When that's the whole the
Right.
real reason for the electoral college was supposed to be it helps the smaller states. Plus, literally, this is what I was taught in school: if a insane person runs for president, then the electoral college steps in. But okay, come on.
No, listen.
Trump
That's already been proven incorrect. And meanwhile, like again, I live in California, so like we deserve to have the votes that we should have. I mean, come on, like if you're gonna move to Wyoming, why do you get as many votes as like New York? Not that.
Well, it's not that they get as many votes because like California gets the most votes out of everything, and it's always blue. But it's supposed to be a fairer system for the smaller states, and so that's the reason why you have them, fighting these battleground states, because the battleground states are going to help decide the election. So
what I don't like about it, though, is I do think it makes people they're not as invested. Like a lot of people in California, for example, just to take the other side, Republicans are like, we're not going to get a vote in California, so they just don't go vote. I hate anything that's going to keep people home from voting. Like, get out there and vote, and you want them to believe they can make a difference. When the Electoral College is dictating what your state's going to be, then you feel disenfranchised.
Yeah, and I think that was the purpose of all of that, But people are making their statements. Trump and the Republicans bet big on anti-trans ads across the country. With 4 weeks left, Donald Trump and the Republican candidates nationwide are putting transgender issues at the center of their campaigns, tapping into fear about transgender women, blah, 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 blah. They have poured more than $65 million into television ads. Bob Woodward, the reporter, he's put out another book. He always does this. He always puts out a book during the election season.
He's the best. He's so good.
He is reporting that Donald Trump secretly stayed in touch with Vladimir Putin after he left office, and he even sent him COVID supplies. Because COVID tests, because they were short. So it's like, now you in love if you sending people your COVID supplies. That's...
Listen, first of all, going back to the whole trans of it all, I think they're grasping at straws, right? I mean, they're trying to find any issue that they can get voters on. And that's when you go to the Southern evangelical, the trans people are going to make all of our kids gay. I mean, it's ridiculous. But that's the last ditch effort to get more votes. Going to the Putin of it all, listen, we all knew that, clearly Donald Trump has a hard-on for Putin. He's like, that's his boyfriend. He's been in love with him.
That man.
It's
loves that man.
It's like star emoji face, you know what I mean? Like, he just wants to be him. And so it's like that kid in school. It's like, hey, at the locker, like, hey, Vladimir, I got some COVID. I'll give you I'm gonna give you my peanut butter sandwich. You know what I mean?
Give you my test. You just be nice to me.
100%.
Anyway,
same exact thing.
Moving on. Remember when we first started this and we were talking about Kamala and her style?
Yes, you dissed her. No, it was me.
You dissed her.
I know it's me.
But what did you say?
I was constructively, I was questioning, and not just for her, but for female politicians as to why they all have to wear the pantsuit. And I think it started with Hillary, because I think they had to hide their femininity to be taken seriously. That was my point.
And I think that they actually listened, because the thing I said was, you should wear a pussy bow.
Yes.
And you know what? The pussy bow blouse has become a political staple for Kamala Harris and other powerful women.
She's pussy bowing it up.
She has been doing it. She did it on the debate. She did it on a couple of her interviews. You've seen her this week. Today, it's a favorite of hers. She's worn the pussy bow blouses throughout her presidential campaign. And it's becoming something of a uniform for her. People are excited because it gives that little femininity.
And I also will say, I think that her suits are becoming a little more tailored. Mm-hmm. And you know what that means to me, Loni Love?
What?
That you and I have our fingers on the pulse of political females who like can be power players in this game. We can tell you it's okay to be a woman and still be powerful. It's okay, wear a pussy bow, wear your suit more fitted. You don't have to wear a boxy shirt. You don't have to be like dressed like a man. Like, be you. Be cute, Kamala. We're voting for you either way.
You know who actually was really good at talking about that was Margaret Thatcher. She actually says that she doesn't believe in losing your femininity just because you're a politician. So she always tried to dress, a certain type of way. So good for you, Kamala. Keep wearing the pussy bows.
Yes.
And moving on, this was something, that we're dealing with reproductive rights for women. And Sally Field shared a horrific story of illegal abortion. And this is her reason why she's supporting Kamala Harris, saying we can't go back. The two-time Oscar winner recalled having a family friend take her to Tijuana for the procedures when she found herself pregnant at the age of 17, which was roughly 60 years ago.
Don't be telling Sally's age. Oh my God. She gonna come for you.
She's Sally up there. Sally been around, She did a Instagram video and it was very revealing. It was very heartbreaking. And she even said that during the procedure, she was being sexually assaulted. And her doctor ended up taking her, and it was the doctor, her mother, and the doctor's wife. And they drove. She said she went into this alley, and they pointed her up to a building. It was dirty, all this other kind of stuff. It was no anesthesia. And they, the man, was doing his thing and whatever they did. And so she was saying that, she wrote in all caps at the end of her message that we can't go back. And that's what a lot of women, are saying, is that we cannot go back. And just to for a person to share that type of personal story, it's serious.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that to that point, I think that's where we are as women, but as a country, I mean, the idea that Kamala has, commandeered the saying, we can't go back. It's not just female rights, but that's the number one thing. It's everything. It's like, voters' rights. It's civil rights. I mean, this administration, the former Trump administration, wants to take us back to the 50s, right, where we didn't have any rights. And so the fact that women, I will say, can galvanize about something when we realize that we can't let men dictate our bodies and what we do with our bodies is really, I think, going to be the one, turnkey issue for this election. Because once you come for us as women, as grown-ass women, we're going to put our foot down.
I have a story real quick. Mm-hmm. When I was a little girl, I had a housekeeper. And the housekeeper, her name was Miss Brooks. I loved Miss Brooks. My mom would go to work, her little low-paying job, and, the government would give my mom money to pay Miss Brooks. And Miss Brooks was a Jehovah's Witness. And so the only thing I used to hate with Miss Brooks is that she would make us go knocking door to door, me and her, to spread the good news, right?
Right.
And if that's what Jehovah's Witnesses do. They knock on doors to try to recruit people and stuff like that. And I must have been about 9 or 10. And people know you knock on the door, people don't answer, you move on. But one day a lady answered. The lady opened the door and she said, "Yes, come in, because I just gave my daughter an abortion."
What?
I'll never ever forget that. But understand, when you are limiting women from having adequate health care, like, it's not just because you don't necessarily want a pregnancy. Sometimes that D&C, that abortion, is actually health care. And you're limiting that for women when you do that. So it's not just about, because everybody just thinks it's about, oh, no, you got to keep the baby. It's like, no, it's actually a healthcare issue. We're not back in the 1800s anymore, people. So we got to get it together. But I will never, ever, ever forget that.
That's really horrible. And I know that I think J.D. Vance made some comments in an interview recently where he was saying that if the Trump administration, is elected, they would defund Planned Parenthood. And that's exactly the kind of thing that we should be afraid of. It's exactly those kind of services that women are being, denied, that are making people have to have abortions at home or in some back alley like before.
And the thing that people got to realize, Planned Parenthood is not just abortion.
Exactly.
It's women's health care. When I was in college, that's where I got my pap smears.
Absolutely.
Because we could get it for free. That's where you go. You would go to Planned Parenthood for birth control.
Absolutely.
So that you get,
so
it's
you
a
don't
lot,
get pregnant. Absolutely.
Right. And it's just a lot of misinformation out there. But this is the reason why we want to explain to people, and women are sharing their stories about what happened, and you don't want to go back. You really, really don't.
Get out there and vote and know that, reproductive rights are human rights.
Moving on, well said. We're having these hurricanes. God bless the people that are dealing with these hurricanes down there in Florida, and somebody that is coming through all the time. We're getting a lot of donations, things like that. Dolly Parton donates over $1 million towards Hurricane Helene relief efforts. And I'm pretty sure with this Hurricane Milton, she's going to dig some more. But she announced that she's going to be donating $1 million out of her own pocket. She's like, no, I'm not asking y'all. I'm doing it out of my own pocket. She says, quote, this is her home. She was in Tennessee saying this, but she says it's time for me to step up and for all of us to step up and do what we can. I mean, how much do we love Dolly?
We love her. And this is not the first time. And she, I think, donated at least $1 million during COVID relief. I think she donated money to have them come up with the COVID cure. Dolly is legit philanthropist. And fun fact, I love me some Dolly. And I was at a Christmas party where one of the, those Secret Santa gifts where you have to take it from someone if you get the better gift. Mm-hmm. So I fought tooth and nail to get this Dolly Parton book because it's so good. It's all of Dolly Parton's outfits. It's this huge book of just Dolly in different outfits, and I live for it. It's actually right here, but Dolly's my girl.
I got the honor of interviewing her.
Did you?
By myself for The Real, and it was on a weekend. They were like, hey, you want to go interview Dolly Parton? I said, hell yeah. And when I say she was doing a concert out there, and so I went backstage, I met her, we laughed, she gave me the greatest interview, just, and I remember asking her about I Will Always Love You. I was like, how do you feel about the fact that, that Whitney, had a successful song that you wrote? And she says, I don't care as long as I get my money. I was like, I heard that.
She's probably very happy. She gets a check every time that comes. But meanwhile, can I just point out, my story was about me getting a book written by Dolly Parton, and then you had to top me by actually meeting Dolly Parton.
Yes,
you win. You win.
Always do that.
We get it. How dare you?
That's how I get my Emmys, okay? I get my Emmys by talking
to. Know. When I get an Emmy, I'm gonna put it right here in front of my face.
I can't wait for you too.
Yeah, right. It hasn't happened yet. It probably won't happen.
Yeah, I like having friends that are also Emmy winners, not just me. Moving on. This is a Diddy update. Okay.
Oh, Claire Huxtable, tune out. She hates talking about Diddy. She hates this.
Well, we have to because everybody is talking about Diddy.
And what are you going to do?
This is what happened. Diddy's mom claims that there's a public lynching of her son, admits that he is not perfect. She released a statement in support of her son as he faces a slew of civil lawsuits and a federal sex trafficking charge. And she says that she's saddened by the allegations that her son faced and that he deserves a chance to prove his innocence in court. She also referenced the leaked surveillance footage of Combs appearing to assault ex-girlfriend Cassie in a video. And since then, there have been multiple others, like 120 people. They even have a Diddy hotline. So if you have been assaulted by Diddy or been at one of his parties, Jesus. She says, quote, I am not here to portray my son as perfect because he is not. He has made mistakes in his past. We all have. My son may not have been entirely truthful about certain things, such as denying he has ever gotten violent with an ex-girlfriend when the hotel surveillance showed otherwise. Sometimes the truth and a lie become so closely intertwined that it becomes terrifying to admit one part of the story, especially when that truth is outside of the norm or is too complicated to believe.
Oh boy. Listen, I mean,
that's a mama. Well, that's a mama being a mama.
But can I say, okay, say Theo Huxtable, my brother, had done something untoward. Claire Huxtable would be like, my baby didn't do that. You guys have got the wrong man. I mean, she would have been like, no, hell no. Mm-hmm. Diddy's mom's like, listen, guys, you know, I mean, wait till we see what we hear. Like, obviously it looks bad. I mean, she's not saying no. She's saying, you know, my son is not perfect.
That's he's not that bad.
No, exactly.
Let him have his day in court.
Guilty. That's when you know guilty. Like, my mom would be like, he's innocent. He didn't do anything. He's not that kind of kid. She's like, well, you know, I mean, he's kind of done some bad things, but you can't mean it doesn't mean he did everything bad.
Allegedly, Diddy has done these things. You know,
okay, yes, allegedly.
Producer Ceej says, remember to say allegedly, Loni. Okay, allegedly.
Can I say one more thing, though?
Go ahead.
Okay, it's not about the mom. The big news to me this week, too, is that, you know, like you said, all these cases are coming, right? They're catching like 120, 150 cases. And this lawyer who's, you know, of course, probably an ambulance chaser. I mean, he's obviously benefiting from this. But he said he had like 3,000 people come forth, and he whittled it down to 120. And now the proof is there's a lot of famous people who were standing around watching this happen, and they're going to be indicted next. So that, I think, is the big buzz in the hip-hop community and the Hollywood community. Like, whose name's going to come out next?
It's all kind of rumors going on. I mean, like I said, there's a difference between the party that people attended and they're taking pictures and stuff like that, and then there's the after party. There's the freak-offs, you know. It's like too much. So
once the after party happens, you and I are like, okay, bye.
Well, you know what? Like I said, that Diddy hotline received over 12,000 calls in the first 24 hours.
Jesus.
You know, some of that is a money grab, though.
Of course. We know
I was at the party.
Yeah. But that's my question to you then. Do you think, like you said, if people are hanging out and like taking pictures and, you know, freaky stuff's going on, are they liable for like not interceding or like, you know, getting in between, or just, I mean, being a spectator, is that guilty as well?
Well, that's what we're going to find out. That's why we have a court of law. Yes. And that's the reason why allegedly they're saying that some of the people are reaching out to the so-called victims and trying to do settlements. So,
allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly.
Allegedly.
So,
how many times can we say allegedly?
To protect ourselves. I mean, that's what it is, you know. Yeah. And the thing is that this is going to go on for a while.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's been going on for years, allegedly. So there's got to be.
It's a lot, and it's a lot of powerful people are involved in it, and that's where it's going to be serious. One person whose name keeps coming up, which is to me unfair because there haven't been any charges, is Jay-Z. And Jaguar Wright is a girl who basically, she was a singer. She was working with Jay-Z. She went on Piers Morgan's show, which is a broadcast show. And Jaguar have for years been putting out things about different celebrities because she was, you know, supposedly in that circle. Well, she went and gave all these claims on the Piers Morgan show, and she gave her perspective on the headlines surrounding Diddy's recent arrest and the questions and the accusations relating to it. She says, for 4 years, I've been screaming not just Diddy, but Diddy and Jay-Z are monsters. She also alleged that both Jay-Z and Beyonce have hundreds of victims with stories about what they've experienced. So Jay-Z and Beyonce's lawyers have responded to Wright's claims, by sending Piers Morgan a legal request to cut her defaming comments made on his show, Piers Morgan Uncensored. I mean, this is what you have to do. I was following along when this happened, and people were so surprised that someone like a Piers Morgan would allow someone like her that's unsubstantiated, it's hearsay, to get on and totally like blast out somebody.
Well, he wants ratings, obviously. I mean, he wants ratings. He's always been salacious. You know what I mean? I mean, he wants to grab the headlines. But I will say, and again, the Jay-Z thing, you know, who knows what that is. I think there's a lot of people in the orbit of Diddy that are concerned. Because, again, whether you were at the party and didn't know what was going on, or you were at the party watching, I mean, I think that there's a guilt by association.
I also want to just add that Piers Morgan issued an apology and a retraction on his Uncensored show after he allowed Jaguar Wright to come on and sprue those falsehoods, alleged.
Well, she's
stories.
been on other shows as well, though. I mean,
yeah, but like, not like this, not like broadcast. It's like this is the problem. It's like, yeah, you can, you know, you go on blogs, you go on places, you know. This is why I try to make our podcast respectable.
Yes,
you know, I want to make it a safe space for women to come on, but I'm not gonna have you blasting people and making, you know what I mean? It's like, no, that kind of stuff is for a court of law. At the end of the day, where is the integrity?
100%.
At the end of the day, and all of that is not true. It's like you're talking from a person who has had to deal with someone defame them. And when you work hard for your career, when you work hard, 20 years, nobody was out there on the road with me. Nobody was out there, you know, when I had to, you know, circle and drive all around these little clubs and everything, and then worked my way up to getting a national talk show. And then you turn around and you want to try to defame someone's character. I just don't agree with that.
Where do you think that comes from? Like, what do you think the motivation behind? Like, why does taking someone down, you know, motivate you or help your career? Because it doesn't necessarily.
Because people don't care about other people. They care about themselves. When you talk about someone and you talk about them like that, that's in your same occupation, there is a little bit of envy and jealousy.
That's what it seems like.
And so you're trying to like bring them down to, you know, to make them look less than, which everybody has a different path. Everybody works a different way. And so you can't sit here and compare what you're doing with what this other person, that just wasn't your path. That just wasn't the way you were supposed to make it. So why are you over here disparaging? If it's true, you know, okay, but you can't, you know, making up stories.
It makes you seem like a hater. It makes you seem like a hater. Yeah. 100%.
Big time.
Yeah, 100%.
Big time. But moving on, somebody who is not a hater and that I love is Mariska Hargitay.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, we know her from SVU. SVU is on season 26.
Jesus. I mean,
and she turned 60 in January, and her character is also turning 60. So she was talking about it. And she is just, when I say a grown-ass woman, I met her, here I am with my stories again. I met her on the red carpet. I interviewed her and Christopher Maloney. And when I say she is just the sweetest woman, and you know, her mom was a beauty queen, Jane Mansfield. And when I saw her, and she, you know, when you only get 2 minutes with them, right? So she comes up, and I was like, I just love your mother. I just try to say something to let them know that I know about them. And I'm like, your mother, I watch her movies. And she was just so, she just loved it. And we had like a great interview. So for her to be 60 on season 26, and Ice Cube ain't going nowhere. No, Ice-T. I get them mixed up.
Oh my God, how dare you. Ice-T is going to come for you now.
Ice-T. Is also on SVU. And when I tell you Ice-T ain't going nowhere.
I don't blame him. Listen, first of all, I think Mariska Hargitay, I don't watch that show, but I know that Taylor Swift named one of her cats after her, so that character. So she must be very influential.
Olivia Benson.
And I think she's beautiful. I've seen her, and she looks amazing for 60. And she's a badass because she carries that show as the woman detective. You know what I mean? Like, good for her. Going back to the iced tea of it all, how do I get on an SVU? I need 26 seasons. It's going to be about me right now. Like, I can barely get 13 episodes. I can be like, fade in on a corpse. I can do it.
You know, I was just talking to you about my my upbringing. One of my first acting roles was on SVU back in the day.
Look at you with all the connections today.
And I got fired within 2 hours because I was a dead body.
What did you do? And you moved?
Mm-hmm. They was like,
you can't sit still.
I was on the ground and I kept breathing. It was like, get her out of here. Get her out of here.
That is so you.
That is me. And I was like, well, we love you. Congratulations.
Mariska Hargitay.
We're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to jump into today's topic, transitioning after 30 with our girl, Peppermint. This is Grown Ass Women Talking. Oh my goodness. Today's guest is an actor, Broadway star, activist, and musician who rose to fame as the first out trans contestant on RuPaul's Drag Race Season 9 in 2018. She made history as the first trans woman to originate a principal role on Broadway in the hit show Head Over Heels. You've seen her on shows like Pose, Harlem, Hulu's Fire Island, and Netflix Survival of the Thickest. In 2024, she became the first trans woman to compete in the Emmy Award-winning hit series The Traitors on Peacock. She's an activist who serves as the ACLU's first artist ambassador for trans justice and is a GLAAD Media Award nominee, as well as one of Out Magazine's Out 100. Please welcome our girl, Peppermint. Hey, Peppermint.
Oh, my God. What an intro. I can't.
I mean, you deserve it, honey. How have you been?
Girl, I've been wonderful. I've been great. I'm happy. Yeah, things are great. Well, I mean, all things considered, there's a lot going on in the world, but I'm great.
What have you been working on?
Well, I just finished filming season 2 of Survival of the Thickest, like 2 weeks ago. I am so stoked. There is going to be, it's too early to talk about it because it's going to come out next year, but I'm really excited.
I'm so proud of you guys.
Thank you. They wrote some really, really, as if they knew that there was going to be so much that our community, the LGBTQ plus community, had to deal with. And Michelle, Michelle, she's a real ally.
Amazing.
And so she's like, you know what? Let's give them something good in season 2.
Michelle Boutier deserves it. The whole cast is so good. And I just love it. I love everything about Survival of the Thickest. But we're going to get into you and this grown-ass topic. For today's grown-ass topic is transitioning after 30. On this show, we often talk about finding yourself and living your truth. But what if your true self is different from your body that you were born into? Thanks to increased representation and acceptance of transgender communities in everyday life, more people are choosing gender-affirming care after 30 and beyond. Now, despite the political challenges and media noise, we're here to remind you that figuring yourself out takes time, and it's never too late to embrace what's best for you. Peppermint, this topic hits close to home. Tell us your journey with transitioning after 30 years old.
Well, I mean, I gotta say, I've always known that I was trans from a very early age. I just felt it. Let me just put it this way. I am who I am today, and I've always felt the same way. Always. Mm-hmm. The only thing that it really changed is maybe some of the language that we had, to describe some of these things, which we didn't really have all those years ago. My family didn't really have the vocabulary. I don't think I even knew anybody who was trans. Certainly not that was out as trans. And so my entire childhood, young adulthood was really spent just kind of getting to know and get getting comfortable with how I felt. Because that's the only thing I could really like figure out.
Let's go back. I want to go back to when you were younger, and when you said you knew you were always this way. What was it like, and what was your family like when you were younger? Were they supportive? Were they questioning? And how did you handle that?
Well, there really wasn't. I think today, if someone sees a young person, an adolescent, or anybody for that matter, I even think people who aren't in the LGBTQ community might be able to like see somebody and say, maybe they're gonna be trans or maybe they're gonna be gay, like one of those two things, and see a difference between the two. But back then, I think people just saw me and they were like, oh, this child is swishy. Like that's all they had to describe.
Right.
I was teased a lot by other kids, and all the other kids were like, oh, you Miss Thing. Like that's what they were telling me, and I went through different
Right.
phases of trying to hide that. Not so much that I didn't want to be Miss Thing, because I always did, but I didn't want to be teased for being Miss Thing. And so like when
Of
we had
course.
to be in gym class or whatever at school, I would try to do different things to like not stand out. And they would beat me up because of that. So they were communicating. They knew before I could articulate that I was who I am now.
Did you have support from your family?
Yeah, listen, my family was liberal. Ain't nobody voting for Trump in my family. And so they were always like accepting. I think the word that we were using in the 90s was like just tolerant, They were tolerant. There was moments with individuals in my family where they would say a certain thing or act a certain way that let me know I can't go too far. But I was allowed to look, I wasn't trying to be in sports. They would have not had me in the sports team, and I wasn't trying to join the
Right.
sports team. So luckily there was a choir club, there was drama class, and my family was really supportive of that. So I guess they were like, as long as there was something from somewhere for me to put this swishy energy, then they could go
Got
along
it.
with it. So they were like, oh, they're just artistic.
Do you think? I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I'm not going to ask your age because we don't do that on this show. But I know for our certain generation, they didn't have the tools, or we didn't have the tools to know what that meant. Kind of like you were saying. Now I think things have changed where we have the words to identify, or at least are open to seeing. Oh, okay, that's a different thing. We have categories now that we weren't aware of back then.
Oh, absolutely. I think had I grown up in today's world, then I probably would have identified as queer and non-binary at one point, and then I would have then trans.
Right.
And so back then, I was like, okay, well, I'll stand over here with the gays, but I'm not gay.
Right.
But there ain't no other category, so I guess I'll stand over here.
Right. You didn't even have the word to use, right? You didn't even know
Right.
Yeah, that's
Didn't have the word.
Right.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
But you knew that you were different, not having the vocabulary, not really understanding. Was that another reason why you transitioned later after 30?
I would say so. Although when I was in second grade, and trust me, it was second grade because I was speaking to a friend of mine named Gavin Downs. I've talked to him since then. He says I could use his name. He was a transfer. He was from Ireland. He didn't grow up in America, so he just didn't have the same prejudices that the other American kids had. So he just seemed like, I don't care who it is. I'm new. Anybody that's nice to me, I'll be nice to. That's what it seemed like he was putting out. And so we were on the playground one day, and we had talked a few times before, and I just remember saying to him, you know what? Let me tell you something about me. I'm different. And I was like trying to articulate it, but I eventually ended up at that. And he was like, I understand. And we were in second grade. I guess we were like, what, 8 or 9? Then later on, I was able to, probably around 16, 17, 18, I eventually came to the realization that I'm trans and that, everything about me is as a womanly vibe. I can feel that in my veins. And I'm trans, but I'm trans and poor. I ain't got no
Right.
money. So nothing I can do
Right.
about it. So I was like, well, let me get into the world of drag. let me do my makeup and hair and feel fabulous because,
Right.
and that allowed me to get even closer to what I was feeling. It wasn't all the way, but it was closer.
Are we talking about the cost for health care to make the transition? Is that what we're talking about?
There was a few barriers. Once I knew I'm trans, the first thing was I can't tell anyone, and I'm not going to tell my family because I know that no one will understand.
Sure.
And I don't want to bring, I don't know, nobody told me this, but I like had it in my mind. So I guess subconsciously I learned it. I don't want to bring shame to my family. So I'm going to wait until everyone is dead and then I'll come out. So that was the first thing I said. And so that got me to like 16, 17, 18. And then I was like, well, I can't wait until everybody's dead. They might live a long time. So I need to be happy before they die.
Right.
And so then the next thing was I really thought that I could just not do anything about the medical transition because I didn't have the money. I didn't have I didn't even know, even if I had $1 million, I wouldn't have known where to go. But most importantly, I also saw how the rest of the world was treating trans folks. Today we have Laverne Cox and all these wonderful people. That then I only have the Jerry Springer Show. And the Jerry Springer Show was bringing trans women on who were like professing their love for their partner. And then their partner
Right.
was like beating them upside the head with a chair.
Horrible.
And then the audience would
Right.
cheer that on. And I was like,
Yep.
well, I don't want that. So maybe I should just keep it a secret. So then eventually the next thing that was a barrier was literally just the money and that not having the resources, not knowing where to go, and not having community. Once I had community and I met other trans girls who I became friends with and I was seeing their journey, then it was a lot easier for me. They would tell me, oh, this is what I did, or this is how I was able to get through. And then the last piece was the mandate from our governor that said it's going to be free in New York. That was like a godsend for me. And I was like, oh! And it meant that I'd be able to afford the care that I needed. It meant that I'd be able to go to a doctor or specialist, someone who had education and expertise on treating trans folks. Because there was a moment in time where I was calling around to doctors. Once I made the decision that, okay, I'd like to medically transition, I was calling around to doctors trying to find if I could get some kind of health care. And the doctors' offices, they were like hanging up on me because they weren't even used to a trans person calling. They were like, oh, we don't know what that is. So back then you couldn't just go to any doctor. Like if you have the flu, you can go to any doctor. If you have a headache, you can go to any doctor. If you're trans, you should be able to go to any doctor. But back then, especially, this was more than 10 years ago, you had to go to someone, wasn't a specialist, but someone who had experience with the community and wasn't going to discriminate.
Well, it's so interesting because I actually grew up, and this is, again, I'm not going to give you my age either, but I had a very good friend who I grew up with who was a trans male. And at the time, I'll never forget, I mean, we were kids, probably earlier than second grade, and she at the time, now he, would play with my brother and my brother's friends. And so me and my girlfriends would be like, hey, why aren't you playing with us? You know what I mean? Like, why are you playing with the boys? And she's like, I'm not a girl. We were probably 6 and 7, little kids. And that early on, and his family is actually a very prominent family he would think would be a lot more accepting because they're a Hollywood family. But it took, his high-profile family to accept that because at that time, again, it was a different time, but we didn't have the words. We didn't have the knowledge of what that meant. Now I have godchildren who are in their 20s who are like, I don't know if I'm gay or straight. I'm just going to figure it out. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's so normal now. We've come such a long way.
I mean, we've come a long way, but we're still not, especially in the African American community.
Yes.
We're not accepting of it.
That's true.
And in your opinion, Peppermint, what do you think are some of the challenges and what can we do to help people kind of see the light?
Two things need to happen. I think number one is we need to have more visibility. And I think ultimately a well-respected, very masculine, heterosexual man is going to need to come out as being trans attracted without being caught or shamed or like
Ooh.
exposed. Just like saying, this is my woman,
Interesting.
this is who I love, and that's it. And I don't care what the hell y'all think.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could help other men understand that we are not a threat, and it also could help other cis women understand that we're not a threat.
I didn't know that that was an issue, like especially in the Black community between cis Black women and Black trans women. But it's been brought to my attention that there is some kind of like competition
It's
there.
new.
I didn't know about. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not new, but that's new. I really do
Right.
think since we're so much more visible than we were 10 years ago, people literally think we just got invented by Hollywood last year on like in April. And, you know, that's obviously not true. One piece that is difficult for people to get around or difficult for people to sort through and they automatically shift to when we're talking about gender and transness is sexuality. People are instantly, automatically interested in genitalia and sexuality. And I remember it doesn't happen so much anymore because I think we've been able to get people to see that we are actual human beings with whole like lives. But people were instantly interested in, so who does that mean you sleep with? And what does that mean for the people that you're sleeping with? Did you tell them? Did you trick them? You probably tricked them. And so like that goes down that lane. And, you know, there's other really prominent trans women. T.S. Madison is my favorite. She talks about her history, and she talks about this openly as a sex worker, as a former sex worker. And so her sexuality and her sexual experiences are something that she talks about openly for people. And so they get to have an understanding of what type of partners she's had. And it's usually, I think it's always been, at least for what she says, heterosexual men. I am, you know, the men that are interested in me are not interested in other men. And that is something that I can understand very easily. And that the men who are attracted to me and who speak with me and everything, that they understand very easily. Their history, their dating history, their sexual history is usually just like either trans women or cis women, but it's just women. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you taking a competition. This is another reason why some people don't have a man.
A Black man. A Black
That's
man
what they say.
specifically.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
But guess what? Listen, girl, I'm sorry. There are plenty of men that are running around and acting a fool that has nothing to do with trans women, because if it wasn't trans women, some of these guys are running around. They're just running around with everybody,
right.
anybody that they can. And that's a
Right.
whole nother topic that they're not
Absolutely.
treating us properly. I think that has something to do more with how men or masculine people treat women and feminine people. And I'm saying that way because many of these men that I've spoken with have expressed, when I try to get them, because I'm really interested, I try to get them to explain about, like, so what is it that you see in me? What is it? How would you describe yourself? Are you gay? Are you not? And they're like, no, I'm only into women. And then when I try to get them to go further, they'll explain that they are attracted to feminine energy and anything that's female and feminine energy, like womanly, like that's the vibe. And they've told me, the ones who are attracted to me and some of the girls that I've talked to, they say that the genitalia has less to do with their attraction. When you see somebody walking down the street, you don't see their genitalia. I don't think you see their genitalia.
Right.
You can see their vibe more than you can see their genitalia when they're just walking on the street or somebody that you meet. And so that's what they're attracted to. And for a lot of men, they see how I walk down the street, how I look and how I present myself more in line with the other women that they're also attracted to than they do with some guy, some football player. And it's so funny because those same types of people who might now say, oh, trans woman isn't a woman, you're a man, you're this. They were the very first people chasing me around the block, chasing me and girls like me around the block to tell me that I was a girl when I was 6, when I was 7. They'd beat you up and say, you're a woman.
And now you become yourself, and now they mad.
They can't take it, darling.
This is what I want to know. What is your view about when you're dating, if you should even tell that you're trans?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I'll acknowledge I have been on a TV show, so maybe that certainly changes how I approach dating or even just meeting anybody at all. But even before that, for a while, I had to ask myself the question of, will I look like other women? Will I sound like other women? Will my hands be the same size? Will I pass? All these little signs and signals that people use to see if you're trans, if you're not, if you're born this, that, I used to feel really self-conscious about. Some of those things, obviously, I was able to, address medically or hormonally, whatever. And some of those things I obviously can't change or haven't or don't want to or whatever. And at some point it was too late. There's a whole list of things that people would say, people who are not trans would have told you, especially in the 80s and 90s, that they know. They would say out of their mouth, I would never say this, but they would say out of their mouth, oh, I know she's a man. That's what they would say about a trans woman. They feel like they can detect any trans woman, and their list would be, look at her feet. Look at her hands, look for an Adam's apple, listen to her voice. All those things go out the window when someone transitions around the same age as puberty or as a young adult. When you transition later, all those things are already come in. And unfortunately, for me, the testosterone did make a mark on my body from puberty through young adulthood. And it made my body develop in ways that, I can't reverse. Kind of like if you're like 6 feet tall, you can't like get shorter.
Right.
You know?
Right. Can't get short, right.
So there's certain things you just can't do. There's certain things you can, but many things you can't. And so because of that, I always just said, well, I'll never be passable. I'll always be read as someone who's what people would say is not a woman. I convinced myself of that. So the downside to that is I had low self-esteem for a long time. The upside to that is I just had said, well, look, I'm going to make it work. And I feel like whatever it is, it looks good, even if it is 6 feet tall. And then I was able to say, okay, I'm going to lead. And with the fact that I'm trans, I assume that people know that I'm trans because I think it's obvious, but I have it like on a dating profile. I have it out there. And I just like to talk about it because I think it will help our community and it'll help other people get used to having that conversation. Because what used to happen is we were around and the same amount of people were dealing with us 30 years ago that are dealing with us today. But they just weren't talking about it.
Right.
Yeah. Real quick, last question. What advice would you give to someone who's considering transitioning later in life?
Find community, number one. Number two is there's no rush. You can transition on your last dying day. Okay, that might be a little late, but
in your time.
In your own time. There's no rush, there's no race, and guess what? No human being stops changing or evolving in some way. Everyone evolves, they learn new things. Hopefully you learn new things about yourself. And so everyone does that, including trans people. And then the third thing is do it. Just do it. People, you will be okay. Everyone, people who love you will continue to support you. And the people who have conditions on their love, they may or may not, or it may take time for them to come around, but just do it.
I love that. And on that note, Peppermint, thank you so much for joining us today. You were a pleasure and a joy to talk
gorgeous.
Lovely. And for our listeners, be sure to check out Survival of the Thickets on Netflix. And when we come back, we're going to get into the takeaway with Loni. This is Grown Ass Women Talking.
Okay, now it's time for my second favorite segment of the show. Which is about Loni. Loni, what did we learn today?
Well, we learned that you just understood something about a rumor about cis Black women and trans women.
No, it was brought to my attention. It's not a rumor. It was brought to my attention that there's a thing right now because evidently people think there's a small pool of eligible black men. And so black cis women, straight women, are fighting with, black trans women to get their men. And I just say, let's squash that beef right now. Like, it's not our fault. It's not the trans women's fault. It's the men's fault. So, I just say
everything is about the men.
Yeah,
so.
It's all the men's fault.
What I loved about Peppermint, first of all, was her transparency. I think that she made some really good points about how we have modernized medicine. So now, even if you transition later, it's a lot easier. You still need to have a community around you if you decide to do that. I also think that you need to have the health care. You need to study and research and make sure that you have the proper facilities and doctors that can help you.
Vote, so we can keep all that.
Exactly. So I just think that it's a topic that we'll continue to explore because we need to have tolerance. We need to have understanding. And like she says, trans people have been here. That's just simple, and they're not going anywhere.
I have a who might have been trans, but then he just didn't have the money probably. I don't know.
Any final words, Erica?
Yes. Sorry you didn't have the funds to live your life, but it is what it is. Now we're in a better place. And Loni, I love you.
Well, that's it. I love you too. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Grown Ass Women Talking. Please follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram or YouTube at GAWT Pod. Come see me October 27th at the Chicago Women's Expo. I'll be at Stand Up Live in Phoenix on November the 10th or at the Miami Improv on December 15th. Tickets on sale now. My book, I Tried to Change So You Don't Have to, is now available on Amazon. Check the show notes for the details. Thanks again to Peppermint for joining us. Check out Survival of the Thickest on Netflix. Erica, she's working, so y'all don't worry. She got plenty. I got to hack everything I do. Erica, I'll see you later.
Bye. Love to everyone. Grown Ass Women Talking is a collaboration between True Love Productions, Dunnigan Lane Productions, and HARQ Media Productions. Our executive producers are Loni Love, Erica Montolfo, and Ceej Polkinghorne.
This episode was produced by Ceej Polkinghorne and edited by Nicholas Crawford. Our music is by Cole Curtis. Special thanks to Elizabeth Munch